Onyx Storm had me laughing, raging, and questioning everything. But after all that chaos, did it actually go anywhere? Let's break it down. Have you read Onyx Storm? Because if you have, I am dying to hear your thoughts about it. I finished it a couple of days ago and I had so many thoughts. They were all jumbled up. They were as chaotic as the book itself. So it took a couple of days to kind of let my thoughts settle down. And I am now ready to talk. So if you have read it, please let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Let's have a discussion. Tell me if you have enjoyed the book as much as I have, or if you are disappointed by the book, or what are your theories for the next book. So please do let me know down below. But if you haven't read Onyx Storm, I recommend that you finish reading the book and then join in the discussion here, because there will be a lot of spoilers. And if you're not someone who wants to get spoiled, then definitely I will see you soon. But for now, let's talk about everything that happened in this book. I tried to organize them as much as I could, and I think the best way to approach it is to kind of categorize the thoughts, but still kind of keep it in the timeline. It's not the most organized thought process, but neither was the book. First, I want to talk to you about the reading experience. And this is the first time that I joined in on the hype of a newly released book. I haven't done that before. I'm new to the community. So all of this is such a novelty, and it was so fun seeing everyone as excited. A little nerve-wracking too, because everyone is a super fast reader. Some people finished it in a day, in 2 days. I am not a fast reader at all. It took me well over a week to kind of get through it. And also, I have a full time job, so I didn't have enough time to dedicate towards the book. But man, was it fun to kind of see everyone's thoughts. And I tried to stay away from the spoilers as much as possible. Only after I was done reading that I could properly engage with all the discussion, but it was such a nice experience. And besides all the community hype, the book itself is a really nice reading experience. At least it was for me. I thoroughly enjoyed reading it. It was so fun. Just like Iron Flame, the book started exactly where it finished in the last book. There was no break in the continuity of the timeline. And what I love about the series is that there aren't any unnecessary reminders of events or character references, which is a double edged sword, because at the same time, it leaves people very confused, particularly if there was a big gap between when you last read Iron Flame and when you're reading Onyx Storm. For me, it was pretty back to back. I had maybe, let's say, 2 weeks, 10 days gap between the two books. So for that, I remembered a lot of the plot points. They were still fresh in my mind. I did, however, find a couple of the things very confusing at the beginning, because I don't know if they were entirely new characters or they were mentioned before in Iron Flame, because I had to look them up sometimes because I didn't know who they were. Other than that, the book is brilliant in terms of pacing, because it is so fast paced. I don't think that I felt that the story dragged a bit ever in this book. It always maintained the momentum. There was always something happening, whether it be it psychological tension or a plot point tension or something is going to happen, a new adventure. It kept going and it kept the momentum up for the entirety of the book. Also, is it just me or did the writing improve as well? Okay, let me explain. When I read Fourth Wing, a lot of the dialogues were a little awkwardly placed. There was some dialogues and the thoughts, like the internal monologues, separated in a weird way by the inverted commas. I don't know. It's just I had to reread certain paragraphs to make sure, okay, this was said out loud. This happened inside Violet's head. But this time around, it didn't happen as much or at all. I didn't even notice feeling that the writing was awkward. I just kept going, kept reading. So I don't know if it's me, but I do feel that the writing was a lot smoother in Onyx Storm. This book was a roller coaster of emotions. It's just going up and down, making you feel a lot of different types of emotions. I laughed. I did not cry, but I was very sad at certain points of the story. I was on the edge of my seat waiting to see what's going to happen next. I also felt very warm and fuzzy at some of the romantic scenes or potential couple scenes. I also cringed at certain dialogues. I've been doing that since fourth wing, so not surprised. But it really did make you feel all the different emotions, even though at a superficial level, but you did feel all of them. Like, this book was genuinely funny. I laughed so many times, particularly when there's banter between Tairn. I still cannot pronounce the name properly, and Andarna. So the two dragons, the old dragon and the adolescent dragon, they are having their little quips, and it was so funny. Let me read a particular quote out loud for you. It's towards the beginning of the book. Violet and Tairn are flying. They're doing their rounds early in the morning and it's freezing cold and they're having this conversation. That's when Andarna kind of quips a little at Tairn and she says, "Your wings won't hold the weight of this ice, and yet yours miraculously carry the burden of your ego." And there are so many more like this, and it's just so funny. On the other hand, there were moments in the book that I felt really sad. There are three moments that I can think of right now. The first scene that really made me sad was probably when Traeger is shot through the heart by an arrow and he just drops dead. And it all happened in the blink of an eye. No one saw it coming. It was a surprise. And I felt really bad because I was so happy that Kat was finally getting her happy ending potentially, or she was not being that angry, toxic self of her. And I was really happy for Kat and Traeger too, because Traeger has been interested in Kat for a while now. So I was really happy for the both of them. But then, poof, he's gone. And that really caught me off guard. I knew someone's gonna die. I knew someone's gonna die on that island. But just, I didn't want any of them to die, to be honest. Yes, but yeah, it was sad for Traeger. The next scene that really broke my heart was when Leothan arrives in Aragia and he takes Andrana away with him. Andrana breaks a bond with Violet, and it was such a sad moment, not only because of the relationship Andarna had with Violet, but also because Sorrengail and Tairn raised Andarna, and there's a different bond over there, and she just leaves because she wants to know more about her family, which makes sense. But it really hurt to see her leave. And finally, there was Quinn's death. And I know Quinn herself did not get much of a page time, but we get to see Quinn die from the perspective of Imogen. And Imogen is such a coconut. Like, she has a hard shell and she only shows her emotions and vulnerabilities in front of Quinn. When Quinn died, it just hurt so much. Like, I genuinely felt the pain Imogen was feeling, and it was really sad. And I did like Quinn. She was like the quirky, fun character. We don't have another character like Quinn in this book. I didn't want Quinn to die. And it was just a stupid way of dying as well. Like, in my head, I was screaming, "Don't go close! Don't go close! Imogen's got it!" But hey, Quinn did not know that. Other than the story making me feel all sorts of emotions, I think the fact that I have so many more questions unanswered than those that were answered, and that makes me so much more angry and frustrated. The list is pretty long, but let me just talk to you about some of the questions I have. Like, how does Theophany always know where Violet is going to be? Always. How? Also, okay, maybe there is some potential answer to that, but how does Theophany have all the detailed information about not only Violet, but also everyone else on the squad? Like, how did she know that Marin's parents are living over there and that Violet's gonna be there? So, okay, I'm gonna go and lure Violet to come here by killing Marin's parents. It's quite specific niche information that she has. And this entire Venin world and the Venins, like, I still don't get how they work exactly. And sure, it's supposed to be like that, perhaps, but Tell me, what is the exact timeline of Jack becoming a Venin? Was he a Venin before or after threshing? When did he become a Venin? When he fell from that mountain? Or was it before? How was he so able to resist feeding on the power that's everywhere? Because I don't see Jack being able to resist anything. He's a very volatile characteristic, and I don't think he can resist anything. Tell me, how do dragons remain bonded to Venin? Like Sorrengail was still bonded to Xaden, and I kind of understand why they were. But like, did Jack become a Venin before threshing or after? So was he already bonded when he became a Venin? Or was he a Venin when he bonded? Because dragons are supposed to hate Venins and they're not supposed to bond with them. Also, there are Venins in the leadership. So how are they able to maintain their positions within the leadership? I expect these Venins to be kind of experienced Venins. So probably sages and mavens. And don't they have like red eyes, permanently red eyes? So how are they able to remain within the leadership? Let's change gears a bit. Like, let's talk about the runes. They were introduced to us in Iron Flame, and I understand the concept of it, but the way they were kind of portrayed scatteredly throughout Onyx Storm, I didn't see a purpose of it. Like, there was a rune that Mira gave to Violet to protect her from the sun, and there were a lot of mentions of how that was helping. I'm sure these will play a bigger part in the next book, sure, but like I would have liked a little more explanation. And why is it always Mira's responsibility to deal with the runes? Do you also think that Rebecca Yarros is kind of taking our feedback and comments and responding to it, like adjusting the story accordingly? Because when I was reading Onyx Storm, a lot of the times I felt like, hey, she listened to me and she's responding to me through that. Because I'm going to give you two examples here. And not that she actually heard me, but I'm sure other people had similar comments as me. In my last video, I mentioned that there were too many unnecessary deaths. Like, it did not make sense why people would need to die so often. In this book, towards the beginning, I think, there was something that Violet said. I'm going to read it out to you. We can't keep doing this. Can't keep accepting needless casualties in the quadrant in the name of strengthening the wing. Not when every single one of us is needed in this war. Sounds like an exact response to my comment that, yes, everyone is needed. Why are you killing people off? Again, in Iron Flame, the relationship between or the interactions between Violet and Xaden were so annoying and cringy and nagging. Why are you keeping secrets from me? It's because of this, I'm brooding. It was very irritating to read this. And there's this thing that Redux says at some point during the story that like he was mocking the relationship. It was so funny reading that because that's exactly what I'm thinking. So I think these two, they were like really cool ways of responding to the audience and showing that yes, she's a self-aware writer, she knows what's happening, and also giving a little back to the readers. We've lost sunlight and now we're gonna be losing daylight very soon, so I'm gonna try and finish all my thoughts at like 4 times speed. Let's talk about the Isles. And the Isles is like the big middle chunk of this book. I really enjoyed reading about it. I liked traveling to the different islands. Each island has its own theme because it worships it, like it has its own predominantly worshipped god. So the people living there have their own outfits, their own cultures, their own rules and regulations, and it was fun getting to know about them. One thing, I don't know if it's an actual thing, but when I was reading the part about the islands, at one point I was like, okay, the narration feels a little different. Did you feel that way? Because I felt that it seemed like it's a part of a different book. The change was very gradual, but at one point I was reflecting. I was like, huh, what happened to the story? Or why does it sound or feel different? If it's something that Rebecca Yarros actually did on purpose, I think it's a very smart use of a literary tool because like we're on an adventure, we're in a different area, it doesn't have any magic, and it also felt different. But I do have some reservations about some of the islands. Let's start with Deverelli. And there is a scene that is quite grim. I don't think it goes with the vibe of the book. It comes out of nowhere, and it just felt like a scene out of a horror book, and I did not want it here. Felt very out of the blue. Then in Unreal, this is the island that worships the goddess of war, I believe. That is Dune. And we see a lot of other females with silver hair. And we get to see a little bit about Violet's background, why she has silver hair. Like, this is a subplot that she opened. Again, with a lot of the other subplots that they just are introduced in a very abrupt way, and then they're not really tied up properly in the end. There are too many subplots, too many things going on, and that's what makes the book so chaotic. And this is one of them. Like, I don't think this was the right way of introducing this backstory. The island, though, the fight scene, the fact that the queen herself fought, it was fun. I liked that. But this entire backstory about Violet just didn't sit well with me. Then they go to Hedotus, which is the island of knowledge and wisdom, and I expected a lot of knowledge and wisdom. I expected that Violet is going to go to their library and look up all the books she can about venin and a possible cure for venin or how they can win the war, because this is supposed to be the island that has all the knowledge and wisdom of the entire world. But there wasn't a single attempt at even getting these information, which was so disappointing, because where else would you find these information? When we first landed on this island, I was so happy. Yes, we're gonna finally see something along the lines of a cure, some research that happens over there, but nothing. I think that is such a wasted potential. The strategy, on the other hand, was brilliant. The tactic that Violet played, I was all for it. I was on the edge of my seat, and things are happening, plot twist after plot twist, and it was really good. It was probably the best strategy I've read in this entire book. The final island I want to talk to you about is Zehilna? Zelnia? Zehilnia? The Island of Luck. And it just felt like an episode from Squid Game, like a reality TV show is happening where people are rejoicing murder of another person. Very heartless. Just wrong vibes all over. Another wasted potential is Violet's father's research. There are so many hints leading up to it that this is a research that people want to find out. It definitely has information that the leadership is looking for. So it must be very vital. And then we go through so much trouble to actually obtain these books. But in the end, they were essentially a very detailed tour guide. It's a guidebook about lands you haven't seen before. And that was such a letdown because it was hyped up so much. I wanted to see that the book had more vital information that plays a big role in the plot progression, but it didn't. Also, was I the only one who figured out at, let's say, two-thirds of the way in that Asher Daxton is actually Asher Sorrengail? Because I don't think it was mentioned anywhere before. Those were just the excerpts from the book at the top of each chapter. And like, I thought when I first saw the name Asher that, yeah, it's probably the father, but okay, no, that's a different surname. And then towards the end, I'm like, oh, okay, they're the same person. Yeah, that was a tube bulb moment for me. In Onyx Storm, we find out about Violet's second signet, and it is a pretty cool signet. Like, it's dream walking. Did I think it would be dream walking? No, I was thinking maybe it was going to be something about time manipulation or time traveling, because we got a little hint of time stopping there at the in Fourth Wing, right? But even so, dream walking is pretty fun. Uh, like, I think in the next book, or as she develops this signet, we're gonna see her being able to walk into someone's dream on purpose, maybe even interact with the dream, manipulate the dream somehow, and maybe she can bring someone else as well into the dream. That's gonna be so fun. But in Iron Flame, every time we saw the dream segments, I thought it meant something different, that the sage was somehow communicating to Violet that they're going to go and get Violet, that Violet's actually gonna end up being captured by the sage somehow. And like I thought the plot would go in that direction, but it didn't. It turned something different. It's just like I don't love it, I don't hate it, it's there. I am eager to see what happens next. We cannot have a book review of Onyx Storm without talking about the romance, and I have a lot to say about the romance. Let's talk about the main couple, Violet and Xaden. In Iron Flame, I absolutely hated their interactions. I hate it. I already mentioned it a couple of times in this video as well. It was really annoying to read this miscommunication trope. But this time, it was fun and refreshing. I love that they have kind of settle down in this relationship enough to be mature adults, and that this is a serious relationship, so their arguments or fights are natural, or like they are no longer silly, they make sense now. The fights, the arguments they have make sense, and I like this dynamic for them. And because also that Xaden is a Venin, they are maintaining some distance with each other, which gives them the scope to be all flirty and fun, and they're bantering, they're bickering, but they're also flirting, and like some of this was just refreshing, and I liked this angle very much. Another couple I was really excited to see develop more of a romance in this book was Mira and Drake. I don't know in which book, maybe in Fourth Wing or Iron Flame, again, I don't remember, but there was a mention that Mira is this formidable soldier in Navarre's army. On the other hand, in their opponent's army, Drake plays a big role. When they mentioned it at that time, I was like, huh, it would be interesting to have something there. And then in this book, they're together in this quest squad. So I'm like, okay, maybe something will happen. And then in Zahilnia, I think Drake gets the cat, right? And then he names it Broccoli. And then there's an entire scene where Mira is interacting with Drake about why name the cat, the orange cat, Broccoli and not Carrot. So I thought something would develop over there in that angle, but that's where it ends, which was very sad. Like you could have added a little more romance there. And finally, Sawyer and Jasenia, another couple that I really wanted to see more of. We get hints of Sawyer getting more comfortable communicating with Jasenia. They are actually talking. They're hanging out outside of the friend circle. So we get moments of that or reference to that, but we never get to actually see any scene that is just the two of them where they are interacting and they are developing some sort of a friendship, if not romance. And I know they have a more serious friendship now, but where's the journey? When did that happen? How did that happen? I wanted more of that. Speaking of Sawyer, I must talk about the disability representation in Onyx Storm because it is beautiful, and I have not read anything like this before. In Fourth Wing, I mentioned in my previous video that I loved how Violet's disability was not a limitation, but something she managed and overcame, and that it's not portrayed as a weakness. Similarly, for Sawyer, losing his limb, that's a pretty big deal. And I think Rebecca Yarros did an amazing job portraying the emotional trauma, the physical limitations, and how much time it needs to actually cope with it, all the mental struggle, the battle of not just Sawyer, but the friends that he has who love and care about him. I really liked this part where we see Sawyer kind of managing this, struggling with this, coming to terms with it, looking up things that he can use to overcome this limitation. And I think this journey was beautifully portrayed. We see the friends wanting to help out but also keeping their distance to give Sawyer that space to come to terms with things at his own time, at his own pace. This is a good representation of how we should also reach out to our loved ones if we have any who are suffering from either a physical disability or a mental illness. There are also other characters who were developed in this book. Let's start with our main characters, Violet. Like in Iron Flame, Violet was just an idiot. But in this book, like she's taking up leadership roles. She's planning things. Her strategies are top notch. And I loved seeing Violet in this spotlight. Like it was good. Xaden, on the other hand, we got to see a little bit more of Xaden as well. He's still the broody character, still staying in control, very much so. But we also see a little bit of that happy, relaxed, careless boy. It was nice to get that glimpse of Xaden as well. It felt relaxing for me not having to see Xaden always be in control and have this dark side. There were also a lot of development of the side characters, particularly Riddock. Amazing, hilarious. I love Riddock's character. Like, we see that he just isn't this happy go lucky guy. He's just not all pranks and jokes, but he also has a serious side. And that he's not only committing to the quest, but he's also taking part in the research. He's also training himself. And the fact that he can freeze an orange from the inside out. Like, we want to see him freeze a venom inside out. And when he tells Violet, I love you too, when Violet was super scared that Rita got stabbed, it warmed my heart. So sweet. Besides this, we also got to see into the perspective of other characters in the last couple of chapters, which also gave us a better idea of how these characters think, how these characters interact with their bonded dragons, which was also really fun because each pair has its own dynamic, which is very different from the others. Not only that, I think the seeing the chapters from Rhiannon's perspective, from Imogen's perspective, also added more to the story and also added more to how we felt or how we connected with each of these characters. Now let's talk about the most problematic part of this book, the last couple of pages, the final battle. What the hell happened? Like, they were super rushed, super fast, too many things happening, yet it went nowhere. I'll try to be as chronological as possible. So there's a scene where the final battle is starting and everyone's strategizing, and Violet did not have the time to put on her armor. The armor is essential for Violet's survival. We've seen that in Fourth Wing, we've seen that in Iron Flame. So I expected at some point in this battle that Violet is going to be very severely injured because she is not wearing her armor. But besides the mention of that, nothing else happened throughout the rest of the book. Then why mention it in the first place? You could have not mentioned it. I was waiting to see her get hurt. Not that I want her to get hurt, but I was waiting for that because you kind of hinted at that. There was nothing there. Okay. Next, let's talk about the scene where Mira is going to die. And no, I did not want Mira to die, not at all. It was breaking my heart seeing that her, like, that she was injured. Thankfully, Brennan was there. How can Brennan not heal Mira? Please explain that to me. Because Brennan was able to cure Violet when the poison was coursing through her blood vessels. The poison had hours to spread throughout her body, and Brennan was able to cure that. Brennan was able to mend a ward stone. He was able to mend a ward stone, so why can he not fix Mira? Please explain that to me. Why will he need the help of Sloane? It's just a couple of layers of muscle, skin, and fascia. Yes, okay, she was losing a lot of blood. Okay, but you are still supposed to be able to mend it enough to allow Mira to survive. You shouldn't need the help of Sloane. I don't get it. This is infuriating for me, okay? I don't understand why, other than making some other point about Sloane, it was needed. And also, Sloane just is magically, coincidentally there. If I remember correctly, there was a scene where we see Eric's dragon and then we see Sloane's dragon and Sloane is arriving. Like, the entire thing about Eric just being in the right place at the right time or sending something in the right place at the right time without letting anyone know that he's a precog. Yeah. So it's too coincidental, okay? Like, this thing that Sloane, Eric, and Dane is just them being Dane all over again, them being Play-Dohs, kind of molding to what the story needs. Yeah, it's too coincidental to actually make sense in the story. And I wish they weren't part of it. Not in this way. Cut to the battle where the dragons are captured. And Xaden's thinking, like, I think it's Xaden's point of view. And there is a sage talking. There's a mention that Panchek was the leak. Like, is Panchek a Venin or a human? I think he's still a human and not a Venin. because the sage was able to kill him, right? But it's just a mention. Like, I want to know more about what happened there. Like, how did Panchik leak all the information, right? And then, who is Zayden's Venin brother? I know everyone is asking that. Who is the Venin brother? Is it Garrick? Because Garrick goes missing in the end as well. And Garrick mentioned that he had one final um task to do. Was that task stealing the dragon eggs, or was it something else? Because six dragon eggs are missing at this point. Also, it makes more sense to me that the Venom brother might be Bodhi, because Bodhi's portrayal throughout the entire story was very different from what we saw in the previous two books. Because in the previous two books, he was portrayed as someone that actually has a role in the mission, that he is a vital part of this missions. And but in this book, no, in this book, Bodhi, you need to stay away. Bodhi, don't do this, don't be a part of this. Like, Bodhi was portrayed as somewhat weak. I don't know, because I did not like how Bodhi was portrayed here, and they kept like hinting that Bodhi is the next in line to the Tyrande throne, and that's when I'm like, okay, just get married already, have babies. You can keep the Tyrande throne in the family. So yes, I wasn't surprised when the marriage thing was thrown at us. I just hated how it was thrown at us so randomly with a ring. That is just so toxic. Speaking of the toxicities, which wasn't there this time as much, but like the jealousy with Halden, really, no. I don't want to see jealousy. It's just, in a secure relationship, you should have trust enough in your partner to not feel jealousy to the extent that Xaden was feeling. Back to the storyline, just randomly having a ring, waking up with a ring, and a letter saying that you're married. Yeah, that is not very healthy either. And Imogen just looking at her and saying, I did what you asked me to do. So frustrating. This is not a cliffhanger. I don't feel that this is a cliffhanger. This is a way to frustrate your readers and not have them come back for more. Because honestly, I'm not missing not knowing what happens next. And I don't think that is the vibe you want to let your readers off with, particularly when there is such a long gap between the third and the fourth book. But yes, I will still read because I still do want to know more. I'm gonna look past this cliffhanger and hope the next two books are better. Okay, deep breaths. Let's wrap this up. My final thoughts on the book. It was such a fun reading experience. I really enjoyed reading this book. I loved that there was always something happening. I'm getting to know more of the world. We traveled beyond the continent. It was so fun. But at the end of the day, the book is very frustrating, very underwhelming, because we went on such a big journey to just come back to square one. There were too many subplots, none of which were properly developed, and you left us with a very rushed and crammed ending. Even though I wanted to give the book a 4 star while I was reading it, the ending just disappointed me so much that I think I'm gonna settle for a 3 star. It's still better than Iron Flame. This is definitely my second favorite in the series. If I summarize this reading experience, or the reading experience of the entire series so far, the word that comes to mind is a wasted potential, because this world is pretty fantastic. And there is so much potential in this world, and I feel like Rebecca Yarros did not really grasp at those potentials. Makes me sad that this book was so underwhelming. Oh well, it's gonna be quite some time before we get the fourth book. Until then, let me know down below if you've read Onyx Storm, what you think of the book, and most importantly, what are your theories for the next book? Like, what do you think is going to happen in the fourth book? Let me know down below, and I will see you soon. Until then,